Hello, everyone, to Auto Asphyxiation. It's Lark, and
Kimberly.
that's right. And we are, I have to say that you kind of inspired this talk, Kimberly, because I think we were talking about, I'm not sure, what was it? Was it in Montclair? Was it in Glenridge? What was it? We got some kind of like flyer about like helping people, and we were like, that is such a
Oh, I
small
think it was
area.
in I think it was in Montclair.
Oh yeah. It was such a small
Yeah.
area. So we were kind of like thinking of the idea of Essex as a city because right now Essex feels very states' rights. And just to kind of go into what states' rights is, I feel like we always have like a little educational component.
Well, I think it's important to educate our listeners.
That's right. That's right. Because you may not have been paying attention. You may have ditched that day of I think it was like civics, or I don't know if they have that anymore. Civics or history or political science. I'm
Probably
not
it
sure
was
which
like
one.
eighth grade civics, I think, is when we
Yeah,
went over
yeah,
this.
yes, eighth grade civics. So we're talking about historically. Okay, states' rights is essentially saying like it essentially says the states have rights to be their independent person. The federal government has limited control over what the states do. But it seems kind of like, oh, that seems like a good idea. It's a cornerstone of like federalism in some ways. We'll talk about that later. But traditionally, historically, states' rights have been used to allow Southern states to do particularly heinous things to African Americans, like slavery, and other things to other historically excluded groups like women, like regards to abortion rights. I'm going to kind of quote Alvin Tillery. He's a political science professor at Northwestern. It's only ever meant one thing in this country, he said, one thing in this country. It means essentially giving states the rights to abuse Black people. And that's the only thing that's ever really been meant for in a broader context of history. More recently, uh, about 10 years ago, it was used in Shelby County versus Holder and the National Federation of Independent Businesses versus Sebelius. In Shelby County, the court struck down on states' rights grounds the formula provided in the Voter Rights Act for determining whether states and municipalities had to get approval from Washington for change in voting rules to ensure that the change is not racially discriminatory. And they also use states' rights to strike down Affordable Care Act because they said it violated expanding it into the states, even to help people, was a violation of states' rights. What you don't need health insurance. The states' rights should take precedent over that. So um, the reason why we're talking about Essex as a city is because in some ways it really looks like the county of Essex looks a lot like states' rights. Um, and even someone even called New Jersey up south because of its kind of Dixie
I'm
heritage.
just growing up here.
It's pardon me. Go ahead.
I heard that numerous times growing up here,
You did?
calling
Yeah,
it
yeah. Because I was kind
up
of shocked. I'm
south.
like,
Yeah.
what do you mean? And they're just like, yeah, it's kind of like the South. And yeah, as a Californian, I didn't know exactly what that meant. Um, I thought one thing that was interesting is that Woodrow Wilson was the governor of New Jersey, and he was one of the most racist presidents in U.S. history, except for Trump. While he was a president, he banned Black students from Princeton University. He segregated the federal workforce. He showed Birth of a Nation on the White House lawn. So it was pretty extensive. But New Jersey is a wonderful place in some ways. It has one of the largest middle class, if not one of the most, well, if not the largest middle class in the United States. It has some of the best schools. And yet, in some ways, it manages to turn its neighborhoods into I think like into bastions of segregation that would make Mississippi jealous in regards to how African Americans are excluded from almost all of these benefits, and also other groups of people that who are historically excluded, such as immigrants certain Latinos, like essentially Puerto Ricans, Dominican people from the Dominican Republic. So, what are your thoughts on this, Kimberly? I mean, like I said, since you kind of inspired this, what are your thoughts?
Well, I have some an interesting background. My parents moved to New Jersey with me when I was 8 years old. In 1984, we moved from the Bronx. We lived on the Grand Concourse in the Bronx, a couple of blocks from Fordham Road, and we moved to Warren County, New Jersey. And Warren County is in northwestern New Jersey, very close to Pennsylvania. And it is a different world from the New Jersey that people traditionally think about. It's a very rural area. And it is a place that when I was growing up, the Klan was still very active in the county, not necessarily in the specific town that I grew up in, but in some of the outlying towns. One of the outlying towns, actually, I lived there for 6 years before I moved to Hudson County, Harrison. I lived in a little town called Oxford, New Jersey, which the original Google results would show you the original town sign of Oxford, which is like a billboard. When you enter the town, it says, "Welcome to Oxford, New Jersey." And it had the Klan in front of it. Oxford has since, in like the last 10 years, scrubbed those search results. So that's not the first thing that you see when you Google Oxford, New Jersey. You have to like really search for it in order to find it. But when I was growing up there were Klan rallies. There were Klan marches down the street. There was a Klan rally in like the neighborhood park that like all the kids in the town used to go to when I was a teenager, as a little young anti-racist skinhead that we very proudly broke up. Mind you, there were about 10 Klan members at all of these things, but it's still a thing. And you know, the town that I lived in that I just mentioned, Oxford, in the 1990s disbanded their police department. And they used the fact that the town of 2,000 people couldn't really afford a police department, didn't really need a police department, especially because the state police always drive through there on the way to their barracks. But the real reason that they got rid of them was because they were all Klan members.
Wow. No, I mean it was very weird. Like when I did move to New Jersey, I did have this weird feeling. And it's very bizarre because it's right next to New York. So you're kind of like, "Oh, why does it feel slightly different here?" Um, and I mean, I found, your story very shocking. When I think Oxford, Mississippi, and I'm wondering, is there any connection there? Then
if not in name, in heart and soul, certainly.
Yeah, yes. And then I found that Bergen County, New Jersey, had like the largest amount of slaves in New Jersey. I mean, in New Jersey, they had slavery, and Bergen County was where the slaves lived, or people who were enslaved. Sorry, people who were enslaved lived. I was really kind of like, and I remember at one point, I was working for, I was freelancing for the Montclair Local, and they actually argued with me. I said, what did I say? I said that New Jersey actually ended slavery quite late. And I think it was like, after the Emancipation Proclamation. And I remember they were like, "Oh, that's not true." And I actually had to go to the New Jersey Historical Society and be like, "Yeah, it is true.
It's absolutely true.
It's absolutely true." That was actually the last story that I wrote for them. And I don't know if that had anything to do with it. I mean, things happen. But we're kind of, I think the thing is that we're going to kind of like talk about Essex because we live in, I call it, we Kimberly and I call this the city of Essex. We refuse, well, I don't know about Kimberly, but I refuse to.
Oh, I'm with you.
Yeah, I refuse to like abide by this ridiculous, I feel political boundaries when functionally it's clearly the same thing. And I kind of like to compare. Some people kind of go, "Well, Essex, it can't be one city." because of the size, et cetera, et cetera. So I kind of did a little, I did a little search, and I know that Essex County has 17 different school districts, which is wild. And it has essentially 129 square miles, 129 square miles. And it has 17 school districts. Los Angeles, which is one city, not LA County, has 502 square miles and one school district. And you're probably like, oh, but that's California. You can't use LA. That's not fair. Okay, fine. Philadelphia has 122 square miles and one school district. So I am kind of like, this is a little bit like, is this the reason why we have so many official? Is the reason that we have so many official cities is so that we can do almost de jure legal segregation rather than de facto. Of course, a lot of places still have segregated school districts, but when you have an actual separate city, you make it so that it's legal to have like, oh, we're not segregating. We literally legitimately have 17 school districts in an area that's the size of a city in any other circumstance.
Well, I wrote this little thing down. So I said, Essex as a city is a grand vision that disrupts the vast wealth inequality found across Essex County. And I want to compare two separate municipalities in Essex County, one of which gets a lot of talk and one of which never gets talked about at all. I want to talk about Montclair versus Irvington and the overwhelming wealth inequality that exists between those two cities that are in the same county. I used to go to a psychiatrist in Irvington, and it is, I'm not scared of places ever. Like, people tell me, oh, don't go there, that's not safe. And I'm like, well, no, every place is safe if you don't act like an asshole. But I would not go to Irvington at night. Like, it's 20 minutes from me, and so is Montclair. That's disgusting. We are the richest country in the developed world, supposedly, and New Jersey is supposed to be so wealthy and so progressive. To have that in one county is deplorable.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing. It's just shocking. You'll see like in some areas, like I just remember looking at some areas like a Newark, that the per capita income is like 17,000 in some zip codes within Newark, and then we have I forgot, it was another city in Essex County, and essentially I had written it down, maybe I lost it, but I had written it down. It was like 80 or like 100,000 or something like that. I mean, just the disparity was just, it was shocking. It was shocking, like this, just the separation. And the thing is that the problem with that is too is that we have a situation where some cities have pools and some cities don't have pools, and you can't even pay to get into these pools, which I'm always talking about this. This is like a thing. My city doesn't have a pool.
That's like, so, I mean, like, how many times when you talk about like civil rights and the civil rights movement, how many times do you see that famous picture of that man dumping bleach into the pool where Black people were swimming? Like, that's like such a key example of segregation, is community pools.
And yes, and I think this is the thing. I think that in a way it's that symbolism. It's kind of like, oh, I think about Montclair. I can't swim in Montclair. I can't even pay to swim there. And it seems so racist. And so for a place to be so progressive that you can't even pay your way in because you don't have the right address. Like, to me, you can't talk to me about progressiveness and all this stuff when your pools are segregated, when your schools are segregated, and you use the fact that it's not my fault. It's just that it's a political boundary. And it's like, this is essentially the same argument. Like, well, we're a different race, so we're a different species. It's like the same argument, like almost, but it's like couched in this other like different way, which is like, and it's really kind of uncomfortable because it's like they can use it, and people use these boundaries in so many ways to exclude people, to stop people from having a conversation. And also, I think about transportation, because we talk about urbanism. It's just, auto asphyxiation. We're talking about the fact that people are kind of like stuck in their cars. And essentially, like every city has to decide, like, oh, can a bus come through here? Can a train come through here? So essentially, you know, to just go like 1 mile, we have to go like, is Bloomfield okay with this? Is Newark okay with this? Is Bellevue okay with this? Is Glenridge okay with this? Is East Orange okay with this? This is ridiculous. This is how you can't. This is why we can't get anywhere in New Jersey, intra New Jersey. Why I can't even get to your house via public transit without it taking like hours, even though we're so close to each other because of the way the cities are set up. And it's like, it's set up in regards to, it seems like it's based on race, but also think about how many like women, how trapped, like say you are a person and you are, somebody from Manhattan, because a lot of people from New York don't drive. They do not drive. The people who grew up in New York, they don't drive. You move to the suburbs because you want to, even though this is not a suburb, but it is culturally a suburb. So you move to the cultural suburbs, and you can't you don't drive, you're literally stuck in your house. If you work inside the home, essentially taking care of your children and being and taking care of your home, you can't even go anywhere because there's the public transit. You can't leave out of your area. Like you almost are like trapped in your little bubble because you can't easily get to Newark. You can't easily get to a city next door. You can't even visit anyone next door. While your spouse can go to Manhattan and have this, fulfilling life, you're stuck in your little, political boundary, segregated bubble, because if you can't drive, you can't go anywhere.
Even in a lot of places where the women are stay at home and do drive, they don't really drive. Like when I used to be like a home care nurse, and I used to work for like wealthier families in Bergen County and things like that. A lot of the moms were stay at home, and they either had a work from home job or didn't work at all. And they really they're like where they traveled to, even driving, was within like 5 square miles, like, just to like run errands and do things like that. Like they really didn't like leave that little boundary, even if they had a car and use that transportation.
And think about how much like how limiting that is. I mean, but also too, I think about, in some ways, okay, I think one of the reasons why you have such a powerful middle class in New Jersey is because you do have, I think about it, think about all these middle class jobs that are kind of connected. Like, you have all 17 school districts. That's 17, that's extra principals. That's extra administrators. That's extra fire department. That's for the people who have an
Bleeding
actual fire
money.
department. Yeah, these are jobs that people get to have. That if you had one school district, you had one fire department, you're going to have like, you might have fewer jobs, or more middle class jobs. They're going to be one administrator and like more worker, more people who are not administrators, and more managers, just to kind of go like, okay, maybe that's why. But then you look at the disparity in regards to who's getting the jobs, in regards to even from management to administrators. Essentially, it's a lot of men, a lot of white men. Like, even though, like, you would think it'd be a little bit more gender equal within these administrator manager jobs, and it's kind of not. And also, it seems as if, you're limited. Like, oh, okay, if it's viewed as an urban, if you are African American, you can only work in the places that are viewed as urban, quote unquote urban. Even if you don't live in a quote unquote urban area, you can only work in the Black section. Whereas, everybody, and I think that's an interesting dynamic. And I don't even know if I was going to even talk about that, but that's an interesting dynamic that happens. So even when you kind of have this, it's like, oh, it's great that you have all these jobs, but who's getting these jobs? Who's being able to like benefit from these jobs? I think that, and it kind of, the fact that I think in a way, if we had one city, people would be able to advocate better. You can't really even advocate because it's like the town is so small. It's like a little neighborhood. You making a fuss over it, it makes you almost, it seems like it makes you like a target, or makes you even less likely to get a job in the future. Or I'm just,
No, you're absolutely right. And to your point about, talking about like all the separate school districts and everything like that, in a separate school district, yes, that you're not having more teacher jobs, you're having more administration jobs. So you're streamlining a school district, having less administration. That saves money. Where can that money go? That money can go to public transportation. So there's the answer for all the people that ask, well, where are we going to get all the money from? We're also talking about like interdepartmental police department work. Police departments traditionally don't really talk to each other. And I am a bit of a true crime girly, and I can tell you numerous cases where, because departments didn't talk to each other because of a city boundary, serial killers got to kill more people and get away with their crimes for longer. So that is another thing. There's crime that goes on, as it does every place. And having one streamlined county police department rather than a bajillion different little police departments can streamline that, and crimes might actually get solved.
I think that's a really good point. I think you don't even think about that. It's just like, that's the thing too. It becomes like this kind of towny thing. It's like, oh, are you from this town? Oh, well, this is this department. This is from this city. This is from this, and so, and it's kind of like, but this county is so small. It's a city. Why why are cities that are like 3 square miles are like, oh, this is, you can't come here because this is ours. Oh, you can't, you could only read poetry if you're part of this city. You could only watch this film if you're part of this city. And it's kind of like, wow, why can't these just be neighborhoods? I understand that people want to have like their cultural, differences, but like, I think about, you could just have a neighborhood. Like you could just have
call New York does.
Los Angeles. New York I don't want to say LA because people kind of like, well, you talk about that. But yes, New York. New York has neighborhood councils.
Yeah. And New York has Chinatown. It has Little Italy. It has all sorts of cultural neighborhoods like that are being revitalized because people understand the cultural significance of those neighborhoods. Like you could still have that. And yes, like you said, you could have neighborhood councils, and, there's ways to make it work.
Yeah, there are ways to make it work that doesn't seem to I think the thing is that these political boundaries seem to be a way to disempower people. It doesn't seem like it's actually making people more powerful. It seems to be disempowering people, because I think about in regards to like environmental and climate change issues. How do you kind of tell the fact that, oh, look, it's flooding. Oh, but the water from, I'm just using an example. This is not an actual thing. Let's say the water from East Orange came into Bloomfield. Like because we have separate cities, we can't even deal with that because, oh, well, we have to have a meeting with East Orange, but then they have to decide if they want to have the meeting. And the thing is, things like that literally happen here, where it's a problem that is a 4 or 5 city problem. How are you going to deal with climate change issues when you literally have 5 cities and each person has to decide if they even want to do it? Like, oh, can we like I think about the Greenway. I was talking about the Greenway. You can't build that Greenway. It's going to take forever because each city has to vote what they want to do with the Greenway. It almost seems like, is this real? Is this ignorance or insincerity? I think that's one of the questions that I have too. Do you think that the county actually has more power, but because this benefits hegemony, it benefits power to have its division, they act like they don't know how to have power? Like, I don't understand how to make these cities work together, because I don't really want them to work together because I live in Glenridge and I don't want to share with Bloomfield, or I live in Montclair and I don't want to share with Newark. So I'm going to act like I don't understand how this works. I mean, what do you think since you've been here a little bit longer?
Oh, I think you're absolutely right. And I think that, I think that there's a NIMBY on every single town council that, like, drags their feet and, like, stops progress in any way, shape, or form that they can. I think that they oftentimes also use individualism and, that personal liberty that's so important to Americans as a guise, when really it's racism. And not wanting that in my backyard. Like I said, the NIMBYs. I used to go to a lot of, when my dad was a volunteer firefighter in Warren County, I did used to go to a lot of town council meetings, and our conversations trigger a lot of these memories. And I do remember, like, the utter, just like, a volunteer fire department, they need a new tanker to get up into the mountains to put people's houses, like like put fires out on people's houses. Why are you dragging their feet? Like, I used to just sit there and just think, like, why? I don't understand.
Yeah. It's like, why would you not? I mean, and I think the thing is too is that people always talk about how high the taxes are in New Jersey. Like, oh my God, and I'll tell you something. The taxes are bloody high. But also too, in California, we have Prop 13, which is actually just awful and horrible. We like completely defunded our schools. I'm not saying that New Jersey should do that. I think that the reason why the schools are good is because the taxes are so high. But the thing is this, you know, they don't have to be that high. Now there are some people who are paying $20,000 in taxes. I mean, that's a lot. That's a lot. I'm not going to say how much we're paying in taxes. It's quite a pretty penny. But it's not 20,000, but it's a lot. And the thing is that if we had one school district, we could still have fabulous schools. But we could pay less because we just wouldn't be paying for all these administrators. And also, too, districts that were a little bit like that are more economically oppressed owing to historical racism, owing to redlining, owing to all these things, it could, we could actually, like East Orange had to, like, essentially, I think they had to fire a bunch of teachers because they ran out of money. I mean,
and the kids had to go half day for quite some time. Like,
and that was unnecessary. You've got some of the richest neighborhoods in New Jersey, in Essex County. Why couldn't we just share the money? And I think that this is, this in a way is also, part indicative of a larger problem. It's, you think about states' rights and how, all across America, essentially school districts are funded by property tax. In the UK, it's like this. It's funded by the head office, like the central office. I want to call it the feds, whatever their thing is called, the feds. And they go, oh, whatever neighborhood you're in, oh, these people are poor, so we're going to give them more money. Oh, these people don't need as much, so we're going to give them. So it's by need. It's not just like, oh, if you happen to be lucky and get the housing lottery, then you have a good school district, or you happen to live in New Jersey. You get to have a good school district, and then you live in Mississippi, and it's like, oh well, roll the dice. So it really depends, and it's like, to me, I see it being that kind of style being replicated through our city rights that look like a baby version of state rights. And I'm wondering, there's so many people kind of like fighting for progressive causes here. Why has that not been, like, why do you think that has not been something that people have fought for?
Well, I think that you're absolutely right that that there are so many progressive causes in New Jersey, and why they don't get funding or they don't get forwarded, I think does have a lot to do with the overwhelming amount of bureaucracy and red tape that goes into literally anything. Like, I remember I managed a Starbucks for like 6 years in Bergen County, and the same thing, like, I had to do some things for my district, and I had to know the health codes of every single township in my district for every single store. Like, and it was just like, why is this like this? Like, why are some like, so like one township required a hand washing station next to the condiment stand, and like it was just so much ridiculousness that causes, like, Starbucks is a big corporation, they can afford to waste and spend time, but what about like your entrepreneurs or your people that are really just trying to start a business in your communities? Like, like, conservatives love to say that they love small government, but when we have these state rights and then become cities rights issues, it gets tangled up in so much bureaucracy and red tape. It's literally impossible to get anything done.
Yeah, and I think the thing is just so interesting is that even with states' rights, it seems like, with this current administration, I'm like, oh, all this whole states' rights thing. Now they're just like, we want a national abortion ban. I'm like, what happened to states' rights? It seems like states' rights and city rights just exist to oppress people. It doesn't seem like it exists to help like small business. It doesn't seem to like help anyone. Your taxes are high. You have all this bureaucracy. You're too exhausted to do anything because all this paperwork. I mean, that's how they stop you, is by doing all this like paperwork. And it's kind of like they exhaust you to the point where you kind of just give up and go, just that's how they kind of stop people from getting like food stamps and like, health insurance and all this stuff. They make it so paperwork extensive that you're just like, you know what? Maybe I'll just starve to death. I don't need food. I don't
It's
need
how
health
people
insurance.
it's how people get millions of dollars into debt with medical care, like, because your insurance won't cover something, and you don't know, you don't have an advocate to tell you ask for an itemized bill, because when you ask for an itemized bill, magically things disappear off of your bill because they don't want to get caught charging you $25 for one Tylenol. And then, like, people get exhausted trying to fight the insurance companies to cover things that they just are like, well, you know what, I'll just go into debt, and if I die of this cancer, then I die of this cancer and my debt goes away. Like, it's they keep you exhausted in almost every facet of our life to stop progress.
Exactly. I think this is, and I think, with that, I think that, one of the last things that I'm going to say is that, I feel that we should just start calling this the city of Essex, and just through sheer propaganda, we will,
Hey,
if it works for
it
the
seems to
right,
work for everybody else.
it does, because this is, to me, I feel like, it's just harmful. I think about Bloomfield Avenue. I think about the fact that if we were one city, we could have a train going up Bloomfield Avenue. We could have a bike lane going up Bloomfield Avenue. We could actually get rid of all these double parkers that are, clogging the street, so that we can't even cross the street safely. We can't walk on the street safely. We can't ride our bikes safely on a street that's huge. Like, there's more than enough room. And here's the thing, I think Bloomfield Avenue is such a good kind of symbol. It's wide enough that it can be shared. It can be shared between bicyclists, people who are trolley, and the cars. It's more than enough room. And the thing is this, is that Essex is big enough to be one city that can be shared. It doesn't need to be like, oh, you're in this section, you're in this section. We have the resources. We should just share. And So that's all I'm going to have to say. Anything you have to add, Kimberly?
I think I agree with you. I think that Essex County is a great place. I think it is a great city. And I think that we have such a great future ahead of us if we can just come together and realize that there is more power in the collective.
And with that, thank you for joining us. And we'll, we're actually, what? Oh, this weekend is going to be Bike Walk Summit at Princeton. So we're looking forward to seeing all you folks there. And that's it. So that we'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.